Well, as a church, we have been going through the book of 1 Samuel, and we're going to be picking the series up today in 1 Samuel chapter 8. It's just 22 verses long. I want to remind us why we are here and who we are as a church. When I prayed something that if you attend here frequently, you've heard me pray over and over again. And it's the mission of our church. A lot of organizations and different churches, when you go to them, will have mission statements written on the wall. A few months ago, I was in urgent care in Central Oregon, this whole shark attack incident that happened. And my wife and I were laughing when we were waiting in this urgent care because they had their mission, vision, and value statements written right on the wall. And we were laughing because I don't think any of the employees there knew what their mission, vision, and values were, right? At our church, you're not going to see our mission statement written on a wall anywhere, but you hear it prayed over and over and over again. Why? Our mission statement came out of our prayers. And our mission, our goal, who we are as a church, we want to know God more, and we want to make him known to more people. That's who we are, and that's our purpose here, to know God more, and to make him known to more people. It's just a shortened down and worded differently version of what Jesus says. What's the greatest commandment? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is what? To love your neighbor as yourself. So our goal is to love the Lord, to know him in a deep relationship. And then how do we love on the people around us? By telling them about Jesus Christ. That is our mission. That is our goal. And we want to be like-minded on that. This last Wednesday night, I spoke out of 1 Peter chapter 3. And we talked about what it looks like for mature Christians, not just Christians, spiritually mature Christians, as they operate in a world where there is suffering and persecution. And this is Peter talking about it while he's in the Roman Empire, not long before he was crucified upside down for his faith. And one of the things he says is that in the church, we should be like-minded. Like-minded. We're all going the same direction, okay? All head the same direction, have the same hearts, thoughts. In there, he says that we should be tender-hearted toward each other. And if you want to know what that phrase tender-hearted is, go and ask someone who was there Wednesday night, and they'll explain it to you, all right? It's not quite what you think, but I'll leave that for another day. You look at it, there's this way that we're supposed to operate. Unity is the word that's used over and over again in the Bible. Unity. In fact, unity is so important that the opposite of unity is sinful. What is it? Divisiveness. And the Bible tells us, warn a divisive brother once and afterwards have nothing to do with them. Have nothing to do with them. And yet, divisiveness is very common within the church. Unity, not so much. And let me clarify what I mean by unity. I'm not talking about uniformity. I'm talking about unity. Last weekend, we were on vacation, my wife and I, and we were in Central Oregon. We got away for my birthday. We're spending time at a resort. And one day, my middle daughter and this guy she's been hanging around, Tyler, they came and spent the day with us. And we were all lounging by the pool, and I fell asleep, right? That's a great vacation right there, right? Great getaway. Fall asleep by a pool. Woke myself up. I think I was snoring and woke myself up. But my eyes were closed, and when I had fallen asleep, I fell asleep to a conversation where I could hear my wife, my daughter, and our friend Tyler all talking. And when I kind of came coherent again, my eyes were closed, but I couldn't hear them talking, and my first thought was, oh, great, the rapture happened and I'm left here, right? And I was like, oh, man. And so then I open my eyes and I turn and look, and I can see Tyler over there, but my wife and my daughter are gone. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'm stuck with him, right? What ended up happening, they just had got up and moved on to a hot tub. But when I opened my eyes and looked, when I fell asleep, the pool had been empty. And when I opened my eyes, it was full of all of these high school guys. And I mean like full. It turned out they were the varsity soccer team from Lake Ridge, and they were all in this pool. So I closed my eyes, it's empty, I open, and they're all there. And the thing that was weird, it took me a second, because they all looked just the same. All of them. Every one of them had the same exact haircut. All right? Same exact, and it was a dumb haircut, right? Looked like mushrooms, and it was just like, what is going on here? This big group of young guys, all of them with the same haircut, and in unison, they all got up and left and all tried to get in one hot tub, and they got kicked out of the hot tub because there was too many of them. But they all had like almost the same exact swim trunks. They all had like the same underwear hanging out of their swim trunks. It was like, what is going on here, right? That's uniformity. Everybody having to look the same, act the same, kind of move around like a large amoeba, okay? What we're talking about isn't uniformity, it's unity. Different people, different gifts, different experiences, different callings, but all heading the same direction, being of one heart and mind about the things of God. To know him more and to make him known to more people. To love him with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And to turn around then and love the world around us. That's what we're all about. And I want us to keep that in mind as we dig into this passage today. And as we do it, we'll see how these things relate to one another. We're at a time in the book of 1 Samuel where a couple weeks ago, the last time I preached on this, we saw that the people of Israel had neglected God for 20 years. For 20 years, they forgot about the Ark of the Covenant. For 20 years, they didn't worship the Lord. And instead, they began worshiping foreign gods, Baal and Ashtoreth. Baal was a storm god of the harvest, and Ashtoreth was his wife, a fertility goddess. After 20 years of running after these foreign gods, gods that all the nations around them worshiped, it says that they began to lament Yahweh. They lamented that they weren't serving the Lord, and they began to weep and cry and wail, realizing how far they had gone from their God. And at that time, Samuel, the judge, the prophet, stands up and he says, if you are truly repenting with all of your heart, every ounce of you, then come back to the Lord, get rid of all of these gods from the nations around us, and serve him only. Him alone. And they did just that. They came worshiping God and praising him, and they brought sacrifices. But as the people of Israel got together, the Philistines, foreigners who had been conquering them, came to fight against them. And what did they do? They didn't say, let's draw up battle lines against this enemy. They said, let's seek our God. Let's seek the Lord. And they said, Samuel, please cry out to God for us. And what happened on that day? Not a single Israelite had to lift a sword or spear against their enemy. They didn't fight against their enemy. God did it that day. And he shook the earth with such loud thunder that it scared the Philistine army and they ran away. And Israel was able to take back every one of their cities that was stolen by the Philistines. Absolutely incredible. In our modern terms, we call that revival, right? People coming back to God to worship him, coming back to God to serve him, and God steps in and does what nobody else can do. He fights on behalf of his people. And for decades after that, the Israelites, under the leadership of Samuel, worshiped God. That's where we pick up the story in chapter 8, verse 1. I'm going to break it into 4 sections as we read through this. We read this in verse 1. When Samuel became old, he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn son was Joel, and the name of his second, Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. Yet his sons did not walk in his ways, but turned aside after gain. They took bribes, and they perverted justice. Let's stop there. When you look at this, it's now fast forward just between 2 verses with Samuel, who's a younger leader, and now Samuel is an old man and has been judging for a long time. What we learned in the previous chapter is that Samuel went on a yearly circuit. He would travel around Israel, going to all the towns, villages, and cities, and he would judge civic matters as he went. And at the end of that, he would always return home to the place of worship that he built there. As an elderly man, he cannot do it anymore. So what does he do? He takes his 2 sons that he has probably had with him on these different circuits, trained them up in different ways, and he now says, I need the 2 of you to go down to Beersheba. It's a town that is far to the south of Samuel's home, and he says, I need you to judge there. What do we know about these 2 sons? First, we know their names, Joel and Abijah. What do the names mean? Samuel named his sons Joel, Yahweh is God, and Abijah, Yahweh is my father. Now that's incredible. The Lord is God, and the Lord is my father. That's the names of his 2 sons. Samuel was a holy man. Samuel was a man after the Lord who worshiped him and prayed to him, who sacrificed to him, and we see a consistency throughout Samuel's life. But his 2 sons, when they became adults, and they now had a chance to serve the Lord as being judges, they were judges on the take. They began to take bribes. They did not walk in the ways of their father. And I think it's important to note this. How did the book of 1 Samuel start? The story about a high priest named Eli, who had 2 sons. One of them would have been the high priest after him, but they were corrupt. With his 2 sons, they were not only stealing from the sacrifices that the Jewish people were bringing to the Lord, they were also sleeping with the women who were coming to serve in the tabernacle. And Eli didn't stop it, so God judged that family. The book of 1 Samuel starts with a father who is a priest, should be leading his family towards the things of God, but his children go sideways. Now, when we were in those chapters, I had a lot of people in our church talking to me and being like, man, this just shows how important it is to raise your children right. Because if you don't raise your children right, they're not going to serve God. But if you just make sure to teach your children the things of God, they will serve God all their life. Notice I didn't say that in any of the previous sermons. Why? Because I read ahead and I knew this story was coming up, right? Here's the reality. Even godly moms and dads that teach their children the things of the Lord and lay a foundation can have children that when they're adults make their own decisions and walk away from the Lord. Brothers and sisters, don't judge each other. Don't judge each other. There is within the church sometimes a moralism that takes place, a pride of, look at me, my children are serving the Lord, but what happened in that household? And you can hear it sometimes in Bible studies, small groups. You hear it in chitter chatter that can take place. Do not judge each other that way. Because even the most godly parents who raise their children the way that is biblical, when their children become adults, those same children have the freedom to go whichever direction they want. That's what took place with this family. Verse 4, all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, behold, you are old. A quick side note, when you're in narrative sections of Scripture, it's careful to make sure that you realize that a lot of times it's descriptive, not prescriptive. The Bible's made up of different literary genres. We're reading narrative, it's a story. And this is one good part where what we're reading is descriptive of what somebody said, not prescriptive of what to say to each other. Please, at our church, do not go around looking at people and saying, behold, you are old, okay? Highly offensive. And just maybe to further that, please don't go to certain people and say, behold, you are short, or behold, you need to exercise more. All of those things are offensive, all right? Behold, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint for us a king to judge us like all the nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, obey the voice of the people in all they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them. According to all the deeds that they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt, even to this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are also doing to you. Now then, obey their voice, only you shall solemnly warn them and show them the ways of the king who shall reign over them. Israel had never had a king. They've been in existence as a nation for a few hundred years. When they traveled through the desert for 40 years, did they have a king? No. Did they have leaders? Yes. Moses led them. Aaron was the high priest. There were judges and elders, but God was their king. When they entered into the promised land, go to the book of Joshua. Was Joshua a king? No. He was not. He was a leader. He was a general. And there were leaders under him. And it went really well for them with that system, didn't it? Look at all the blessings that happened under leaders like Moses and Joshua, where they did not take on a monarchy. They did not have a king. And God blessed them in incredible ways because he was their king. You go to the book of Judges. How well did things go in the nation of Israel during that time? Horribly. Over and over again, problem after problem after problem, decade after decade, century after century. They didn't have a king. Why did things go badly? Was it because they didn't have a king? No. It wasn't because the system God gave them was broken. It's because their hearts were broken and sinful. And it was their own sin, their own rebellion against God that caused problem after problem after problem. We fast forward to this time here, and things for the last few decades have gone really well under Samuel. But now that Samuel is old, they're looking at it, and there's a disconnect taking place here. Under Eli, who would have led the nation after Eli was gone? His sons, right? It would go on to his sons, but they were corrupt. That didn't work well. So God raises up Samuel. As Samuel's getting old, who does Samuel obviously think is going to take his place? His two sons. But they're not following the Lord. So this whole hereditary thing isn't working very well, right? So what do they say? Give us a monarchy, right? Give us a king. And then after that, his son will be king. And then after that, his son will be king. And after that, his son will be king. They're doubling down on a broken system here. You look at this, and when Samuel hears, give us a king, in the ESV, it says that this displeased Samuel. In Hebrew, it says that this was evil in Samuel's eyes. And I think that's a good distinction. It's not like just this is displeased, like, when I got Chipotle Grill a few days ago and I ordered double protein and it was clear there was not double protein on it, right? Was I displeased? Yes. Was evil? It might have been. But you look at it and no, to Samuel, this is like evil. Evil that they're asking. But the Lord answers in a very unusual way. Samuel, obey their voice. Give them exactly what they are asking for. And note this, Samuel. They're not doing this against you. They're doing it against me, just as they always have. And look at this. They always have. They're slaves in Egypt. They cry out to the Lord. He hears their cry. He comes to save them. He sends plagues to save them. The last plague, angel of death. They're saved by the blood of a lamb. That is incredible. They're released from slavery. Pharaoh pursues them. What happens? Parting of the Red Sea? That's incredible. They've experienced miracle after miracle after miracle. God has showed up time and time and time again. They go to Mount Sinai. Moses goes up the mountain. He's gone for a few days. And what do? Hey, Aaron, we don't like that we can't see this God. Like this whole faith thing, what's that? We want a God we can see. How about we make a golden heifer, right? And we'll worship that. Seems so foolish. And while God is talking with Moses, giving him the tablets with the law written on it, they turn away from the one who just saved them and go after worshiping a golden heifer, a golden cow. That's crazy. And over the next few hundred years, they do it over and over and over again. And God is saying, fine, Samuel, give them what they want. Give them exactly what they want. And the crazy thing is, God knew exactly that this time would come. It didn't catch him unaware. He knew that they would eventually rebel against him and want a king. How do we know that? Because when he gave Samuel the law written on tablets, he was up on Mount Sinai. The people are worshiping a false idol down below. In Deuteronomy, he literally wrote about it. When you come to the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you possess it and dwell in it, and then say, I will set a king over me like all the nations that are around me. And it goes on to explain, all right, you're going to want a king someday, like all the other nations have. And when you do it, here are the requirements for that king. He knew beforehand that the people would rebel against him. And he wrote into the very law that he gave Moses while the people were worshiping false god, this covenant of how to have a king. He says, obey them, Samuel, and tell them exactly what's going to happen when I give them a king like they want. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking for a king from him. And he said, these will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots and to be his horsemen and run before his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands, commanders of fifties, and some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest, and to make his implements of war and the equipment of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his servants. He will take the tenth of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officers and to his servants. He will take your male servants and female servants and the best of your young men and your donkeys and put them to his work. He will take the tenth of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. Whoa! Oh, let's put this in context. What would you do if I stood up here this morning and I said, hey, I'm going to step down from being a pastor. I'm now going to be in politics. And I have somebody I want you all to vote for. And I think this person, I think you all should vote for them. And here's what they're going to do for you. Your children and grandchildren, they're going to draft them into the military. They're going to make them mow their lawns, plant tomatoes in their garden and pick them. They're going to turn your children and grandchildren into their own slaves. They're going to tax you incredibly heavily. I mean, like, you think you've been taxed already? You're going to get taxed even more. And they're going to take your donkey. I mean, we don't do that. That would be like me saying, they're going to, by the way, your Ford F-150 or your Honda Accord, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It's now theirs, right? That's what's going on here. They're saying, we want a king. And God says, all right, Samuel, let's give them exactly what they want. But please tell them this is what's going to happen. You know what would happen if I stood up here and I actually tried to do that with you. I mean, some of you would throw chairs at me, right? It's like, what? And God says, I am going to give you exactly what you keep asking me for. And it's not going to go well. It's sort of like the children of Israel when they were in the desert and God gave them manna all the time. And they began complaining about the manna that they were living off of. And it's a hilarious part of the Bible because they start complaining and whining and saying, we want meat. Everyone around us has meat. We want meat. We don't want the manna. And God's like, okay, you want meat? I'm going to give you meat. In fact, I'm going to give you so much meat, it's all you're going to have, and you're going to end up vomiting it out your nose. It literally says that in the Bible, right? And so he's like, fine, you want this? You don't want my system? I will give you exactly what you want, and let's see how that goes for you. Church, be careful what you want. Because sometimes God will give it to you, even though it's not going to be a good thing. How do you think the people would respond? Verse 19. The people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. And they said, no. I don't know why I keep saying it like that. No, but there shall be a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. And when Samuel had heard all the words of the people, he repeated them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, obey their voice and make them a king. Samuel then said to the men of Israel, go every man to his city. On Wednesday night, we'll pick up the story and learn about who this next king is and how this happens. This is shocking to me. These people want a king so badly, and when God spells it out, okay, this is what's going to happen if you want a king. I mean, to me, this doesn't sound like a good deal, right? You're going to have less freedom, less money, your children, grandchildren, slavery. And they're like, no, we want this. And did you catch why? It's said more than once in the story. Because we want to be like all of the nations around us. We want to operate and we want to be like them. We want to be like them. This is what we want. And it's going to go horribly for them. By the time we get to chapter 12, they're going to be looking at Samuel and saying, Samuel, we sinned. We sinned. Would you intercede for us before God? And they realize then what they did. Any application for today? I mean, this was written 3,000 years ago. But the scary thing is God's people don't change. God's people don't change. Do we want the things of the world around us? Absolutely. Absolutely. And here, let me push on this a little bit. In our nation right now, because of events that have happened with Charlie Kirk, things are running hot. Emotions are flaring up. And Christian believer, are you operating like the world or like a mature Christian? Which one is it? Remember how I talked about unity, oneness of mind, about how the opposite of unity is divisiveness? Let's get real. Over and over, I have heard pastors and political commentators this week say this statement. If your pastor did not talk about Charlie Kirk last week, leave that church. If you are here today because you're from another church and you heard somebody say that and you're like, fine, I'll leave that church. They didn't talk about Charlie Kirk. Go back. Show me anywhere in Scripture you can get something like that. That's what we call cancel culture, right? Somebody doesn't say exactly what I want them to say, when I want them to say it, in the correct tone, and now I'm going to leave this church, even though I was married there, even though my children were dedicated there, even though they were there for me when a loved one died. Really? Really? I mean, you look at it. I had people questioning our church. Why didn't Tim say something last weekend at church services about Charlie Kirk? Why didn't I? I wasn't here, right? I wasn't here. And here's the thing. My longtime friend Zach preached for me, and the Lord knew on that weekend I wouldn't be here. Zach had prayed and prayed about what to speak on, and God gave him exactly what this church needed to hear on that day. Amen. How to be salt in this world. If you go online, did I talk about things that are going on in our culture? Yeah, when I got back, I did. On Wednesday. Anyone curious about what I talked about on Wednesday? Do you want to go on our YouTube feed and hear about it? You can't, because the computer malfunctioned and it didn't record it right? But I guarantee somebody out there is going to be like, look, they didn't talk about it on Sunday. They didn't talk about it on Wednesday. That is divisive. It is divisive. It is not one heart, one mind, moving towards the gospel of Jesus Christ. Yesterday, there was a conference back east on church and culture. Charlie Kirk was supposed to speak at it. The man they got to replace him as speaker is someone that has been so offensive to pastors. A year and a half ago, with political situations that were going on, he started saying this. If your pastor isn't talking about this, they're exactly like the pastors who didn't say anything in Nazi Germany. Okay, so you're not directly calling me a Nazi, but you're saying like, what? Is that unity or divisiveness? Warn a divisive brother once, and after that, have nothing to do with him. It's a sin. And I'm saying this because, brothers and sisters, are we for God? Or do we want the political system of the world, and do we operate like the world? Always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have. But do it how? With gentleness and respect. I've heard people recently say, I don't want to be kind. I want to tell the truth. Let's see. The fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. And I'm not saying don't get involved in political things. Please hear me. I'm saying we do it completely differently than the world. Completely differently. Because we have a king already. We have a king. This is what we read. Mark chapter 1, verses 14 and 15. Now after John was arrested, Jesus came into Galilee preaching the gospel of God. Recently, I've heard people say, if your pastor says, I'm all about the gospel, no, he needs to be about the culture war. What did Jesus preach? The gospel, right? Jesus came to Galilee preaching the gospel of God and saying the time is fulfilled and the kingdom of God is at hand. So repent and believe in the gospel. Are we going to line up with Christ or with somebody else? He preached the gospel of the kingdom that was at hand. And the kingdom has to have what to be a kingdom? A king. John chapter 18, so Pilate entered his headquarters again and called Jesus and said to him, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus answered, do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it about me? Pilate answered, am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you over to me. What have you done? And Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered over to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from this world. If you put your faith in Jesus Christ, you are a citizen of a different world, a citizen of a different king. And praise be to Jesus Christ that we have the one true king and his spirit inside of us.